red in the eyes, no signs of life no more. I put your love under the knife. Leave me to die here all alone. No signs of life no more, no. A crying dove may never fly. It's black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh. 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 It's black and white. No more. Black and white, just let me go. It's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico, it's black and white. White, white, white. Just let me go. It's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico, it's black and white. White, white, white. It's black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh. 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 It's black and white. It's black and white.
Hello everybody and welcome to Porsche Club International Sim Racing Challenge. We're here for round 2 at the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps. My name is Jack Oliphant. I'm joined yet again by Jack Well, but this time we've got a new commentator in the booth as well, Joe Peak. I'll start with you, Joe. How the devil are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited for this. I mean, you gotta love these cars, and at a track like Spa, you can't go wrong.
You absolutely can't, no. And Jack, of course, you're returning. You've had a busy weekend, but you've been looking forward to some more Porsche Club racing action, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been non-stop for me in regards to commentary over the past couple of weekends. But of course, I make time for Simracersworld TV. Why can't you? There's always brilliant action on show. And tonight, like you say, we are at Circuit de Spa Francorchamps, and it's a circuit that is steeped in motorsport history. It's been around for absolute decades. It's played host to multiple Formula One Grand Prix with their support series. Of course, the Mobil One Porsche Super Cup. They come here, as well as the Blancpain Endurance Series, the World Endurance Championship, and World Rallycross as well. So it's a circuit that really is no stranger to proper motorsport, and we're only going to add to that tonight because we've got these beautiful Porsche 922s out on circuit and circulating, really pushing the limits already. Sorry, the Porsche 911s. I'm already thinking of the 922 Cup car, the fairly newer one. But of course, this is the GT3 car out on circuit tonight, made to SRO specifications with a flat six producing around about 550 horsepower, a perfect race car at a perfect racetrack.
Indeed, yeah, Joe, it's a beast of a car, as Jack's just been explaining, hasn't he? And it's really, it does test the drivers to their absolute limits. What's your experience sort of around the Porsche Club series as a whole?
Well, to be honest, they have. I am familiar with them, but I haven't gotten a call a race. This is my first time getting to work. So I'm excited to get to call this because I know this brings out a lot of drivers, not just from the sim racing world, but plenty of those that like to hop into the real thing. But I think this is going to be a big challenge because these cars, with so much of the weight being towards the rear of it and so many fast corners, I think that we're going to see it be a handful for many of them.
We will exactly see the handful. Now, who are we looking at realistically? If we're going off who did well last time, Gavin Halls is one of those drivers. I'll just take that away. There we go. We're in practice at the moment. Gavin Halls, one of those drivers that did fairly well last time. And Rafael Amorim as well. He's currently in third place in practice. But, you know, people in practice, Jack, they never really show all their cards. So they don't show their hand entirely. They sort of tend to wait until qualifying. But sometimes it is good mental preparation to try and get that sort of early lap time and try and be at the sharp end. Know your competitors are going to be there as well. It always helps.
Yeah, I think at this stage in practice, of course, everybody already knows, barring any new names, of course, either coming to the championship or maybe a few names have left as well. There'll be a few drivers that maybe aren't quite familiar with each other, but they will have a good basic idea on who is and isn't competitive. Jacob Tofts, for me, somewhat out of position, down in 8th place. I'd expect him to be top 3 going off his win at Road Atlanta. So there's lots of talent, lots of drivers out there. Of course, at the head of affairs at the moment, Gavin Halls. He is the head racing instructor at the Bahrain International Circuit, so he definitely knows what he's doing behind the wheel of a race car. So it doesn't surprise me that he's right the way up there, but he's got one of the newcomers just up behind him, the number 66 Finn of Henry Filaco. Only, 2 or 3 tenths of a second behind Gavin Halls, and then only 200ths of a second behind Henry is Rafael Amorim, another name that we saw at Road Atlanta. And for me, it was really what could have been for Rafael. He had lots of potential, lots of pace, and the race never really came to him. Keep an eye out for him. I'm guessing a podium today.
I was going to say, you got plenty of the Porsche Club of America drivers around and about, but it looks like the Finns have sort of come back fighting, realistically. We can just have a very quick look at the team standings at the top of your screen now. You can see that the Porsche Club of America, 291 points, Porsche Club GB, 230, and the Finland, Porsche Racing Club Finland, officially known as, with 136 points as well. Now, what they do to work this out, Joe, is they take the top 7 place drivers from each team. So let's say Porsche Club GB, they came potentially 1st, 2nd, 5th, 12th or something like that, or their top 7 drivers basically. They add their points together, and then obviously they do the same for Porsche Club America and the finish total as well. But crucially, the Finns have come back fighting, like I said. Henry in 2nd place, Jarmo Levo in 4th. He had a very close battle at Road Atlanta, but it was never quite his race to really seize. Hopefully he'll come back fighting and swinging. I'm sure he will. And Matti Navala as well. He's a driver that we saw a lot of him, but he wasn't at the sharp end. He's come back with some pace. I think it's going to be more mixed up this time round.
Certainly. And I mean, any sim racer worth their salt can't count out the Finns. You never can. And that's one thing that I think could be a strength for them in that team's championship for a series like this is the Finns are a very tight-knit club. It's not a huge club in terms of members, but they work together very, very well. They're not afraid to get in and help coach one another and share setups and whatnot, and try to find speed for everybody. So I expect them to really come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, indeed. And you've got some of your fellow Americans here, as we mentioned, Raphael Amorim, Michael Cooper Smith as well, right at the sharp end. I know you'll be doing your best to be unbiased, but I'm sure you'll be hoping for a potential American win here and to rack up as many points, especially sharing the booth with two of the Brits. What can you hope to see out of these drivers? Because you've got all the race info, you've got an awful lot of sort of real-world drivers and sim racers out there trying to go as strong as possible, haven't you?
Exactly, and much like Jack was saying, Raphael Amorim probably can't be counted out because he's got multiple PCA wins, and there's some steep talent in this series. So if you got a driver that's getting wins, they are one to watch out for. And well, he's a dreamer too. He wanted to be a race car driver when he was growing up, and he said that this scratches that itch for him. So if ever there is something to motivate someone, it's those childhood dreams.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, the brilliant thing about sim racing in a lot of ways, isn't it? It does scratch that itch because it is difficult to get into real life racing. I'm pretty sure everybody who goes into the racing world or racing industry has one day, they've dreamt of being a real racing driver. But it's just not realistic for 99% of the population, is it? But at least sim racing gives us an opportunity, Jack, to see people who have real talent, who don't necessarily just have the opportunities they've missed out on, sort of thing. So it's nice to see them in the sim and racing hard.
Yeah, absolutely. You can never really rule out a simulator. While it isn't, of course, bang on the money for as realistic as you can get, I think it gets very, very close. But of course, you can spend millions of pounds on a simulator, so you can have wind and you can have G-force, but you've got to wear a helmet while you're in the simulator. But now we're talking like, this is multi-million-pound real-life racing team equipment that they use to train their drivers. And I'm not sure about you two, but I definitely wouldn't be able to fit one of those in my room, let alone afford one. So for the drivers that sit at home and they've got themselves a budget setup that really does work for them, it's great to see them take to the circuit and really enjoy it as well, because of course budget is a really big thing when it comes to real-life motorsport. And the drivers that can get out there, and if they love it enough and they have got that natural talent and the natural knack for motorsport, we've seen some of those drivers go from racing on the simulator to racing in real life. We saw James Baldwin win the second season of the World's Fastest Gamer, and then I watched him on his way through up the ranks, getting the signatures on his license, so then he could go and enter the British GT Championship, as well as the PlayStation ran one a few years back as well, where we saw a couple of drivers work their way into GT World Challenge as well. So there's always that hope, I think, which constantly gives you the drive to get on the simulator, just turn a couple of laps and see where it puts you. And it's great to see such a big grid. And bearing in mind this is limited to 3 nations, imagine what we could do if we opened it up to worldwide audiences. The grids would be unfathomable. We would have to almost create splits, as iRacing do, just to be able to fit in the popularity of this, because it's not only the sim racing, it's not only the circuit, it's the car as well. Everybody loves a Porsche, whether you think they look like a Beetle or not. They are a brilliant racing car. They are just so pure. They've never changed anything about them, really. They've always stuck with the same setup. Rear engine, flat 6, typical Porsche understeer, but you can drive around that with a little bit of fine tuning in the garage. So it's just a perfect race car.
I can't believe you just said on Porsche that it looks like a Beetle. If for anybody out there wondering who said it, was Jack Werrell, not Jack Oliphant, not me, okay? Yeah, keep your abuse to him. Hopefully no one does bring in with the abuse. But just before we go into qualifying, Joe, just because there's a couple of minutes left sort of thing, and while we're on the sim racing subject, and obviously a lot of these drivers may do track days or real life racing here, there and everywhere as well. Over the pond in America, is it the case, as we just mentioned Jack Baldwin then, obviously he had the opportunity, he won World's Fastest Gamers, and he had the opportunity to go and race in British GT. Is esports becoming a bigger presence in America as well?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, even as he was talking about it, the first thing that came to mind was William Byron in NASCAR. So
oh yeah, of course.
It absolutely is showing its face over here, and you see plenty of IndyCar drivers. The roadside as well picks itself up. IMSA has been getting extremely involved with iRacing, and I've worked and been able to call a number of IMSA drivers here on the sim. So I think it's had its effect basically the world over. And personally, it's a joy to see, because I also had those childhood dreams of becoming a race car driver someday. Obviously, not as talented as some of these guys, but seeing it become this it makes me hopeful for the future, that those kids that are coming up can see this and go, I have a way in. I don't have to have all the money. If I work hard, I can be those guys someday now.
Yeah, indeed. And the drivers you're looking at the moment, I'm sure, as we mentioned before, echoed those dreams once upon a time as well. And two drivers that have really shown that they've taken to the sim really rather well. Jacob Tofts and Gavin Hulls, both Porsche Club GB representatives at the moment, but they are top two. And then you got Henry, I'm going to, sorry, apologies if I butcher this name, Henry Palaco. I'm going to say it like that. Hopefully someone could phonetically spell it in the chat if I'm saying it wrong. In third place, Rafael Amorim in fourth, and Jarmo Levo is rounding out the top five at the moment. But practice means nothing, Jack, does it? Because we're about to go into the race. Into the qualifying. Can you imagine if we just went straight into the race? No, we went going straight into qualifying. I think we've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes in fact, to see who's really got their setups dialed in, who's got their sort of mentally dialed in as well, and who can get out there and produce the fast lap times as soon as possible.
Yeah, so qualifying on the way, like you say, 15 minutes worth of qualifying, lone qualifying as well, so there's no slipstream, there's no draft assistance, anything like that. Any mistake you make, it's on you. There's no excuses for that. So already we've got drivers taking to the circuit up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon now. It's one of those circuits where you can recognise it straight away, whether it be a track map, whether you get shown a corner, any motorsport fan you get shown any part of Spa, you're going to recognise it, because it's such a brilliant circuit. It's seen, like I said earlier on, motorsport over decades, probably getting close to a century of motorsport now, has Spa. It's got over various evolutions. Of course, it used to use public roads, but now it is a pure-built FIA Grade 1 facility, so it definitely fits the bill in regards to a racetrack. And like we've said multiple times, it's got a perfect race car racing around it at the moment. So it's all down to what the drivers can do. I think Jacob Toft, dark horse in this one. Keep an eye on him. While he maybe wasn't the quickest in practice, just wait for qualifying just to see whether he can hook that car up. I think only in the race will we be able to tell how it's going, because of course some of the drivers, they've got very busy schedules, as is expected, and somebody who was busy trying to collect that moment and ended up pointing backwards. Very handy driving there from Jarmo. Managed to flick the car around, but returned either straight to the pit lane or potentially got disqualified for qualifying conduct there. But here is Christopher Pays going through Piff Path and then on the run up towards Stavlo. It's one of those things. The drivers that you tend to not really pick up on in practice and qualifying are those drivers that you don't pick up on in the race until the last 5 minutes, because you've realised, hold on, they've gone from the bottom of my timing to the top of my timing. They've just worked their way through, like under the radar, I think. So Jacob Tofts, if he's not at the top in qualifying, keep an eye on him throughout the race.
Well, I remember last time Austin Greatorex, we noted in qualifying, he was horrendously out of position, and it was very entertaining watching him come back through the field. There is plenty of action all the way through, Joe. I don't know if you tuned in to have a watch of any of the action at Road Atlanta, but it was certainly stunning. If you missed qualifying, or anybody out there is wondering how qualifying works, they do get 15 minutes. However, it's not 15 minutes of continuous lapping. They only get 2 flying laps, and they can choose when to do those 2 flying laps within this 15 minutes. It's such a long outlap Spa, isn't it, Joe, that you really do have to try and sort of time it to perfection, because if you mess up one lap, then you've wasted an entire fast lap. It puts the pressure on you, doesn't it?
It does, and unfortunately for fans of the real world who've been sick of hearing about this, track limits are a big concern, even here in the sim. It's so easy to go that little bit over in a number of places. Granted, they have tweaked them recently on iRacing so that it's 4 wheels over the line, so it's a little easier to tell. But racing drivers will always push the limits. We all know that. So they're going to try and take it as far up to that edge as they can go. And in qualifying, that can bite you if you're on one of your best laps.
Yeah, Jacob has just put in the YouTube chat, does any of these cars have meaningful downforce? Jack, they're absolutely brimmed to the brim, basically, aren't they, with downforce? It's very important in these cars.
Yeah, it's because they're so well modulated by SRO, the governing body that, at least for most of the championships that I'm aware of in the UK and Europe, and potentially some over the pond as well. You'll have to maybe correct me if I'm wrong there, Joe. But they build all of these cars, so you've got to sell a certain amount, manufacture a certain amount to make them eligible to then be turned into a GT3 car. The same with GT4. I'm not 100% on the GTE rules, but then you can modify it with various parts and various purebred almost fixings to make the car what it is, and the hours of research and development going into just losing a couple of grams potentially, or maybe slightly altering a door to change how the air reacts to that door, and the air then goes onto the rear wing to produce downforce. There's so many little things that manufacturers can change, of course, all well within the regulations of SRO that do modulate how much you can do to make sure you're not finding a loophole in the regulations to find some absurd performance. But yeah, these cars, absolutely purebred race cars. The amount of research and development, money, time, everything that's gone into these cars, like I say, they are a purebred race car.
Yeah, Joe, from across the pond, the sort of biggest example of that, how they do differ, as we are starting to get the first quick laps on the board, we'll just run through them in a second once we finish this point. The biggest sort of championship I can think of where the cars look like road cars but they differ so entirely is NASCAR, isn't it? Because basically the NASCARs are all the same, but they have different shells on to make them look like the road-going cars, but they're nothing alike, are they?
Exactly. It's kind of funny because we call it stock car racing over here, but it hasn't been stock car racing since about the mid-70s, I'd say.
Wow.
Like you said, they are bespoke race cars at this point, and yeah, there is so much that goes into it at this stage, and the teams do try to get around what is considered stock of them now, which is, they, like you said, they have a body that they must use based on which manufacturer it is and whatnot. But they'll go just as far as you guys do over the pond there, where there have been teams in recent years that have been trying to make the body panels flex that little bit just to get that right amount of aero that helps them be faster in a straight line. So there's all kinds of shenanigans going on over here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan Dyer with a livery that I wasn't expecting here. I'm guessing some kind of Japanese-inspired livery, maybe anime or manga of the sort of thing, but a very striking car. We're not going to miss that from Dyer. I'm just noting the qualifying at the moment because obviously we've done one of these two flying laps. Gavin Hall, Jacob Tofts, they're two top, like we saw in practice. Then we got Henry in third place, Rafael Amorim, Christopher Pays, James Huth, representing America from 4th down to 6th position, Matty Navala, Jordan Dyer, Jarmo Levo, and then rounding out the top 10, Billy Smith. But you have to go all the way down to 12th position to find the next Porsche Club GB representative, which is Austin Greatorex, qualifying a bit better than he did at Road Atlanta. But that is a very strong showing from the Finns and the Americans who've come fighting here. We mentioned it before. Jordan Dye, he's on a semi-quick lap time. His Sector 1 was going to be it was very quick, but Sector 2 and Sector 3 slightly down the road. So we'll just see him finish off this lap time, see where Dyer gets to. Navala stays in 6th position. Smith goes up to 7th place. Dyer comes across the line, and it's exactly the same as where he was. He can't improve on 10th position. James Huth not improving too much either. He's Porsche Club of America. Coming across the lap time, he's not going to improve from 9th place. We're just trying to see if anybody else is out there maybe looking to improve. Jacob Tofts isn't looking at the moment, but Rafael Amorim, Joe, he's coming in strong at the moment. He hasn't gone quick in Sector 1, but his Sector 2 at the moment, I think, has gone green, and he may well hook this one together and maybe challenge Jacob and Gavin at the top.
He could. He's looking. Actually, it looks like he's on a slow lap. Yeah, that car doesn't look like it's hustling at the moment. Yeah, so he might be trying to size it up for just this one last go. He is on his second lap, and I'm seeing them getting 3 flyers that they're allowed to do. So I think the 7 maybe trying to cool off the tires. That is a thing you can do in this sim, is try to get the tires into the right working range. And so I'm wondering if maybe he felt like that first lap they were just a little too hot, or he wasn't happy with it, so he's just going to cool them down and bank on this last one being his best.
It's crucial, isn't it, really? Because I know as a driver in the sim, I just want to keep going hot laps and try and get the rhythm, because I'm always making mistakes and everything like that. But it can be so difficult, a skill, but it's so crucial to know when your tyres are at peak condition, to know when you're sort of the track's rubbered in a little bit more. Obviously, this is lone qualifying, so it might not come into play that much, but to be able to turn it on, Jack, is a huge skill, which really separate the best from the decent racers, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not only really mechanically hooking everything up, it's also mentally, because you've got to make sure you are ready to just go out there, forget about everything else, and just focus on getting that lap together, but then not overthinking it, because if you think, I know personally for me, I cannot drive with a delta on, because I will end up racing that delta and thinking, oh, I'm half a second up, oh, I'm a second up, I wish, and then just go and mess it up, because I get so excited that I'm going to find time, and then there you go, there goes all the time. So it's one of those things that you've got to make sure you're careful of. If it works for you and it motivates you to drive quicker, perfect. If it doesn't, then obviously you don't have it on. But it's one of those things. There's so many different variables for the drivers to negotiate around. James Hughes coming through the final corner now, through the bus stop chicane we go, all the curb on the exit, coming towards the timing beam. Can he improve upon his time? Crosses the line. Now, is that an improvement from himself? No, it's not. A 2-minute 16.770 posted. So that leaves him in what is 10th place. Here is Rafael Amorim, still out on this flying lap and still out continuing. Currently in provisional P4. The best improvement for me that I could see from him, I would say if he can find a 10th of a second, that will put him only a position forward. I can't see him getting 4/10 of a second to find his way onto the front row of the grid. If he can do it, I take my hat off to you. That is going to be a top job if he can, but it's going to be very, very difficult. However, Purple Sector 1, not the best Sector 2 in the world, but not a million miles away. Of course, our pole sitter at the moment, provisionally, Gavin Halls, he's gone 2/10 quicker through Sector 2. Could be something to do with setup, but we'll keep an eye on Rafael Amorim in towards Stavlo now. You can see provisional pole time, 2-minute 15.650, and then the top 20 separated by under 2 seconds, so 1.7-ish seconds is the gap from first to 20th. And of course, this is in qualifying, so there's no draft assistance. In the race, the lead car will be punching a nice big hole in the air, so everybody else can reap the rewards from all of the aerodynamic benefits. So it's only going to get closer as the race really starts to dig in. Coming up towards the bus stop chicane now, hard on the brakes, the nose dips down. Make sure you can manage any sort of lockup. Of course, these cars do have ABS and traction control assistance, but if you push them too hard, you may potentially lock up. I think that could have been very wide from him. I thought that was going to be a 1x lap, but no, he does improve. A 2-minute 15.921. Like I say, he does improve his position, doesn't improve his row, but up into 3rd place, Rafael Amorim.
Yeah, Austin Greytwick's about to come across the line as well, and he's got 3 green sectors. What can Austin do? He comes across it, he boots himself halfway up the field from 14th to 7th place. A good qualifying lap time by him. I don't think we've got any... Well, we've got Jacob Toffs. He's out there. He's the only one who I think can be putting in a legal qualifying time. So we're essentially seeing, Joe, our grid order, isn't it? And it's packed to the brim with quality. We know that. We've discussed that. But look how close everyone is. I mean, we've got the gap to the leader here, but if we go for an interval time, that is, I mean, Navala Toupe's, that is 1/1000th of a second. Austin Greatorex, 100th of a second. Smith, 200th. Elliott, 700th. This is going to be incredibly close. And up the Kemmel straight, Joe, it's just going to be anybody's guess who's going to get into that chicane first.
Yeah, the qualifying only means so much, and then you get a track like this that offers so much draft, and from there, all bets are off. Tofts is a big question mark on this 3rd lap, though. He's got to make up a 10.5 on Halls. Right now, I'm showing him about 1 to 2/10 slower than his best time. So unless he can find something in this last chicane, which could be possible, I just don't think he can snag that pole.
No, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? With only 2 minutes left, I mentioned before that you only get 15 minutes to do 2 or 3 flying laps. But to be honest, you only get 2 or 3 flying laps in a 15-minute session around Spa. It does take so long to get round here as Jacob Toffs comes across the line. I think it's going to be a second place he'll have to put up with. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, you're right. So track limits, like you mentioned before, Joe, coming into play there on Jacob's last lap.
Yeah, and I was saying that was a big concern, and yeah, drivers who did not respect those limits will find them deleted, just like in real life. And Tofts, unfortunately, only got a single lap in there. His first one was the only one that counted, so he was clearly pushing. Good for him that it was as good as it was, because he could have been in a much worse position if he just put a banker down on that first lap.
Apologies. Jack, you obviously... I don't know how many times you've been in the likes of Gavin Hall's position, where you've been top of the timing towers, but What's your sort of opinion? Oh, as we have a little bit of a spin there by Leif Peterson, that was a little bit too much load on the right-hand side going up the curb. But if you're Gavin Halls and you know you've put a good lap time in, what's your sort of thought process then? You just come in and just think, oh, that's good enough, that'll do me? Or do you think, I'll get out there and do some more practicing?
In regards to the latter stages of qualifying, I tend to leave it because I would think, oh, well, that's the time I've posted, albeit I'm never really up towards the top end of affairs, very rarely, if I am. But it's one of those things, personally for me, I will go out and almost over-practice, look for time that isn't there, overdrive the car, and then I'm already in the wrong mindset before the race has even started. So I tend to sort of leave it, set the time, go, right, that's it now, step away, get a drink, whatever, and then come back, get in the car, fully refreshed, ready to go. So of course, as you mentioned, Joe, it's the track limits, and of course there's the Xing system on iRacing. So it's 1x for the off track, 2x for loss of control, and 4x if you have heavy enough contacts with another car. I had a quick look in this session. I think 25x is the limit before you get disqualified. 16 X's will get you your first penalty, and then every 5 thereafter you will get another penalty as well. So that's something the drivers have got to think about. While they do want to race, and of course racers will race and nothing's going to stop them, no silly X limit or anything like that, but if they are pushing the cars to the limits, they may find the X limit as well.
They might indeed, but we've got a grid to run through, so let's see how they line up for the one and only race, unfortunately, this afternoon. Gavin Halls then taking pole position with Jacob Toffs a 10th.5 behind in second place. Rafael Amorim in third with Henry Pelajico in fourth place. Christopher Pays is rounding out the top 5. Matti Navala in 6th. Austin Greatorex 7th. Billy Smith in 8th position, with 9th being Johnny Elliott. The top 10 rounded out by Chris Bourne with James Huth and Jordan Dyer 11th and 12th. Then 13th down reads like this: Jarmo Levo, Michael Cooper-Smith, Siddall, Sharkey, Peterson, Clark, Kiiskanen, Simpson rounding out the top 20, with Pelajico in, that's Mika Pelajico in 21st, Jerick Alto in 22nd, Danny Jones 23rd, and Tom Slater 24th. And then the last couple of drivers to read off is Andy Marston in 25th, with Jarmo Valaikanen, in 26th position. Jarmo, the only driver to actually not put a lap time in the end. We saw him spin very early on. Maybe he thought that was good enough for him. I'm not entirely sure, but he's at the back of the field, so maybe worth getting out there and doing one more. But again, he may have been disqualified from qualifying because he did have that spin. I'm not sure how strict they're going to be. Anyway, Joe, Gavin Halls is going to lead them around, isn't he? A rolling start, slightly different mindset again to those standing starts that we might often see at Spa. But again, an opportunity to really get the jump on his opponents.
Absolutely, and there is still some danger in the La Source, like we see with the standing starts here at Spa, but it should spread out a bit more because much of the field is still going to be in that bus stop chicane when they get the green flag, and hopefully that spreads it out enough that we can get through cleanly.
Fingers crossed, Jack. They're just going through Blanchimont as they come up towards the chicane. What is the tactics here? Is Gavin Hall's going to wait until the very end of the line? Is he going to try and back them up early? It looks like he's going to try and back them up early. Halls is slamming the brakes on here, making sure everybody's stopped nice and cleanly before they go through the chicane. Toffs will be very keen to try and get the jump. However, Halls has gone at the first apex. Halls put his foot down, and it's a good race lead. We've had incidents in the background, I believe, but Jacob Toffs follows him across the line. Maybe there was a communication in a Discord server with those two as the Porsche Club GB drivers get through into the lead. Rafael Amorim in third place with Henry Pelajico in fourth. Christopher Pye still in fifth position.
Yeah, so round 2 of the championship is now underway. Of course, round 2 being the second and final round we will see from the Porsche Club GB International Sim Racing Challenge. That's definitely a mouthful. But at the moment, we're already starting to see a couple of packs form. You can see the top 8 really all nose to tail. And then further back, everybody else is just trying to work their way through. Great stuff from Gavin Halls, read the situation perfectly. If there was no communication there, very respectful racing from Jacob Toft as well. His fellow countryman left him very little room towards the apex. He came out of the throttle, gave him ample room, and then still managed to remain in that position. He's got Rafael Amorim all over his tail, followed by the number 66, then the number 3, then the number 21. It's all nose to tail further back as we go down towards the Bruxelles hairpin for the first time. Very tricky braking zone if you haven't got ABS, but of course these cars do. I think I heard a knock in the background, potentially another little bit of contact further back. Quite a tight and twisty section of the circuit there. Austin Greatorex had a bit of a moment off the course, so we'll just keep an eye out on positions gained and lost at the moment. everybody seems fairly sedate and no real issues apart from maybe one slightly further back, but it's all go up at the front. Gavin Hall's still leading Jacob Toft.
Yeah, Joe, we've had pretty much only about 4 overtakes since the start of this race. Everybody else is pretty much in where they started, so a well-behaved start from everyone.
That surprises me a little bit. I was saying earlier that, you know, the slipstream offers so much. I would have figured everybody be aggressive here at the start to try and get as far up as you can, because yes, it allows you to pass, but the problem is you get these sort of trains forming often at this track, even in these cars. And if the leaders start to pull away, then, well, if you're one of those that has missed that first train, you got to hope that you have enough pace to run them down. Otherwise, if they all work together, they're probably going to be pulling away from you.
Indeed, we're just having a look further down. This is the battle for the top 10. James Huth and Johnny Elliott as they all fly towards Francorchamps and into the final chicane. Again, drivers trying to fill the mirrors of the others who are around them and trying to get into the apex as soon as they can. It's a psychological overtake on the cars, basically what they're trying to do there, Jack, isn't it? Because they're trying to fill the mirrors and make the driver in front of them miss their braking zone and just make a mistake. But it's all psychological. They were never really going to throw it at the inside, but they like to throw that fake in there just in case.
Yeah, it's definitely mind games. Just force the mistake from the car in front. It saves you having to risk an overtake at any point. But then, I've got to admit, I've fallen foul of it sometimes. I'm so desperate to force the mistake out of the car in front, I end up making one myself and then just dropping back either a position or just losing time to the car behind. So you've got to be so careful just to modulate how aggressive you are with the mind games and how aggressive you are with the actual moves themselves. Back up to the front we go. It's still Gavin Hall's leading Jacob Toft. Rafael Amorim knocking on the door of both the Porsche Club GB drivers in front. So it's all a nose-to-tail affair at the moment, fairly sedate. We sort of saw this at Road Atlanta going into the final 30 minutes, the final half of the race at Road Atlanta. That is when we started to see positions start to change, because people started to realise as they go into potentially a pit window and they go into the point of the race where the tyres are slowly starting to fall away, while the cars are getting lighter and the fuel's starting to come out, it will change the complexion of how you drive the car. You might have to turn in slightly earlier, you might have to brake potentially a little bit later. Although you've got less fuel, you'll have less tyre grip, so the brakes won't bite into the tarmac quite as much. So that's when you want to strike, when the car is new to everybody and it's constantly changing. So if you get that position made, they've then got to make the same assessment behind you, but by that point it's potentially too late.
Yeah, well, that's crucial, Joe, isn't it? Because it sort of caught me and Jack out a little bit last week, but they do have to make a pit stop because I think they're restricted on their fuel. It'll only go for a certain amount of time, and obviously this is a full 1 hour race that we're doing here today. And it's all about that. So it's another tactical decision you have to make, I suppose, isn't it? Of when you come into the pits, if you're in a big train like this, what do you wait 10 minutes to try and just get in there and put some extra fuel in the car? Then you'll be out in clear space because everybody is up the road, and you just try and put in your clean lap times? Or do you try and move your way up the order as much as possible for as long as possible and go for a late pit stop? It plays another mind game with these drivers.
Yeah, and from what I've seen over the years here on iRacing, the GT cars often will try to go long. It's sort of counterintuitive, especially if you've been an open wheel fan like me for much of your life. Everybody talks about the undercut, but a little bit wide there from Chris Brown and at the front of this group. He might be under threat here from Elia. But yeah, often you'll see them just try and run as long as possible, especially if they're in a group like this, run as close as you can to that car in front, use a lot of lift and coast in the slipstream to save fuel, and then jump them in the pit stops. And also, you're running on the lighter car for more time if you do that. So that's another reason we've seen so many use this, is poking his nose to the outside. Jean-Luc going to try one on Brown. The question is, can he get this done a long way around?
Yeah, it's a difficult braking zone at the best of times, and it's a hard turn in there by Elliott, and I think he's just about got it done, although he's going to have the outside for the right-hander, but it doesn't matter, because crucially, he has the apex. Elliott goes into that 9th place. Chris Bourne with that tiny mistake, Jack. It doesn't take much, does it, to open a door for another driver? That's all it takes around here at Spa, as Levo, who we saw really at the front end of the field in the first race at Road Atlanta, here fighting for that mid-pack scrap, and Jordan Dyer falling down a couple of places as Carl Sharkey, who's subbing in this afternoon for another driver who couldn't make it, he's fought himself up to 14th place, and all of a sudden the top 9 may not have moved, but this mid-pack is about to get spicy, Jack.
Yeah, never mind opening the door. I think Jordan Dyer was so desperate to prise the door open off of Jarmo Levo's Porsche, it left him with very little tarmac on the exit of no-name corner, so he never managed to get past Jarmo Levo, lost out then to Michael Cooper-Smith. Carl Sharkey worked his way through as well, and Jordan Dyer right the way down into 15th place now, so still positions to be made. He's got a little bit of pressure from behind if he isn't careful. Matthew Siddall just sat waiting in the wings as well, potentially to pick up another position. Back up to the front we go. This is Christopher Pies looking to work his way up into 4th place. He's going to have to be very late on the brakes if he wants to get the move done. Brake just after the white painted line. Gets the car slowed down, but nowhere near close enough to make an overtake. And at this stage in the race, I don't really think it's going to benefit you, because where are you going to go once you're in front? You've got the leaders just in front of you. You've lost a bit of time having to go too wide through the corner, and still with strategy to think about. I don't really think going for many hard overtakes at this stage of the race is really going to benefit you in the long run. And as you alluded to there just a little earlier on, Joe, GTs, they tend to, like you say, just run for as long as they can, to the point where in 3, maybe 6 hour races, they will double stint the tyres to make them last, because there's no point changing tyres if you don't need them. Of course, we saw last time out at Road Atlanta, a couple of the drivers either forgetting to tick the tyres or forgetting to untick tyres, so they didn't want them, or potentially actually wanting them and it costing them so much time. So I think today, even more so at Spa, because so much of it is flat out, the only time you're ever really going to need to pit is just for that fuel. You don't need tyres.
Jarmo Levo trying to go around the outside here. Michael Cooper-Smith, Carl Sharkey's looking interested as well on the inside. They're going to go 3 wide almost 2 by 2 actually, as James Hu just keeps ahead of Jarmo Levo. Sorry, Chris Bourne keeps ahead of Jarmo Levo, but here comes Cooper-Smith again on the inside. It's a difficult braking zone at the best of times. There's plenty of difficult braking zones around Spa, to be honest. Carl Sharkey and Jordan Dyer again getting in on the mix, and this is going to be, hopefully these guys, Joe, will have a massive grin on their face, because it's been clean and respectful, but it is close as anything.
It is intense. There's no doubt about that. I'm amazed at how close they're willing to race one another. Definitely some familiarity and respect amongst these guys. Levo, though, is going to come away with the advantage of this group and hold on to that 12th position. But man, we were almost 3 wide into Lacombe there for a second.
We were indeed, yeah, as we jump. We're now 8.5 minutes into this 1 hour race, and to be honest, it looks like it's going to stay like this for the majority. Fingers crossed, touch wood, no commentators curse here hopefully today, because we've got nice close racing all the way through to the end. We saw Christopher Pies overtake Henry Palahico. That's the only overtake we've had in the entirety of the top 9 positions. Since qualifying, that's quite incredible, to be honest. They seem to have just gapped each other quite a lot, so they're just sort of getting into the groove, trying to score the points maybe, and just trying to enjoy themselves for this first 10 minutes, and maybe some drivers are holding a little bit of reserve for the next 50. We might see them pushing on, but as we said, this mid-pack is, there's nothing being held in reserve here at the moment. We have a few people going off tracks and left, right and centre, and not many crashes though yet, Jack, which is very nice to see.
Yeah, it is indeed. The last thing you want is somebody to put in all their time and their effort, making sure that they can drive the circuit, drive the car to a suitable standard and to a point where they're comfortable with their pace around here. Of course, you want to make sure you're competitive when you enter. You don't necessarily have to be, because of course a lot of drivers just join for the fun factor. Really, it is one of those hobbies where you can just jump on, have fun, turn a couple of laps, and then go about your daily business. But the last thing you want is somebody to put that time aside purely to focus on this event and then get caught out, whether it be a mistake from themselves or potentially another driver as well. But I've got to say, the driving standards have massively come on since I've started commentating as well. It's one of those things where you see a couple of maybe clumsy mistakes is probably the best way to put it, but the more time drivers spend in a car or around other drivers as well, that's one thing that is really underrated, I think. Trust with other drivers. If you went to a league and you're racing with the same drivers week in, week out, you build up that little bit of mutual trust between the pair of you, so you know, oh, well, they brake quite early, but they're very good on the exit, so if I'm going to make a move, I'll go up the inside. But then they'll see you doing that, and they'll say, okay, well, I know he's aggressive on the brakes, but I can get him back on the exit. So you build up that little bit of insider knowledge on each other, and you build up a profile, so to speak, of their driving standards, and then how to negotiate them when you approach them in a racing situation. So at the moment, I've got to say, very clean from everybody involved. Lots of proper racing as well, not shying away from anything. It's door to door, a tiny bit of trading paint, and that's just motorsport. It's great to see, and with these Porsches, I really expected nothing less. Very brave stuff there from Matti Navala. How he got away with that, I don't know. Bouncing over the gravel at, what, north of 100 miles an hour with steering lock inputted as well. How he kept that pointing in a straight line, I will never know.
Yeah, brave but well executed, it has to be said. He's not dropped too far away from Henry ahead of him, but Austin Greatorex, if anything, is looking very interested, isn't he? So this, we were mentioning the fight for the mid-pack. We're all of a sudden looking at a four-way fight here, all backing up. Christopher Pies has had a little bit of a gap, hasn't he, Joe? And so has Raphael Amorim. But all of a sudden, the fight for 5th place really hotting up. But we've had a crash take us through this one, Joe.
Yeah, Sharky, it looks like he got punted a little bit, unfortunately. Dyer comes in and hits him from the back, and then another one gets him. That's Siddall, unfortunately. Kind of had no place to go in this situation.
Yeah, big shame there. So that sort of mid-pack battle really sort of coming undone, but there is a potential move for the race lead here because Jacob Toft is closer than he's been before on Gavin Halls, and look at this, weaving around and about. These drivers have raced each other an awful lot. They trust each other inside and out. But as we're going towards Lacoub, all of a sudden we may well see some moves being thrown around here. Johnny Elliott, one of those drivers who's very interested in James Hoot's position. Jean Molivo and Chris Braun as well. Again, this mid-pack, there may have been a spin, but they're still going at it, Hammer and Songs, and there's a swapping constantly as Jean Molivo goes off the circuit, but he manages to hold the drift in the gravel, comes back on the circuit. Dyer does get past, but it could have been so much worse, Jack.
Yeah, got away with that quite lightly. I'm not 100% sure how he managed to avoid the wall, but it's one of those cars. We've seen it on multiple occasions already tonight. That if you do find yourself trudging through the kitty litter, you can just about work your way out without any contact if you're quick enough on the steering and the throttle. You can see the lead duo as it stands. Gavin Hall still in the lead ahead of Jacob Toft. Jacob will be saving a little bit of fuel, just sat behind. His tyres may be feeling slightly worse for wear. Of course, he's picking up the dirty hot air from Gavin Halls emanating from his Porsche, so fuel-wise it's working with him, tyre-wise it's working against him, and as we slowly close up on 15 minutes of the race already completed, we may potentially start to see, if they are in communication, a position change. It wouldn't surprise me if they take shifts, so to speak, up at the front of affairs, but they can't hang around for too long because Christopher Pies just sat behind. Now we're back to this battle again. Austin Greatorex, no stranger from Simracersworld. Of course, we've seen him on both seasons of the Porsche Club GB Sim Racing Series, where they raced the 911 Cup car, the former 911 Cup car, I should say, recently been updated. But Austin Greatorex really pushing forward, only 4 tenths away from Matty Navala. He's got Billy Smith all over him. So all over the coattails is Billy, looking to pick up a position. Through La Source they go, back down to the run to Eau Rouge and Radion. It's still Austin Greatorex just about hanging on to the duo in front. It's almost a pair of duos as it stands. They're constantly ebbing and flowing, just trying to keep in touch with each other.
Yeah, as we go on board over Radion, you can just see now Matty Navala, he's got a very good run here on Henry, and I think this may well be a swap for the Finns. Matty Navala does go in front. He takes that top 5 position ahead of Henry Pelahico. Gostin Greatorex still in 7th position. Billy Smith still in 8th as they qualified as well. So they're really closing up. But Joe, if you're in the position of Gavin Halls and Jacob Tofts, the top 2 at the moment, they're constantly within about 2 tenths of a second of each other, but we just don't focus on them that much because it doesn't feel like Jacob's really ever going to throw one up the inside. They're not desperate to overtake each other here, are they?
No, they're not, but I'm not surprised that we saw Jacob just pull a little bit of a move there, or at least Gavin try to pull some defense, because now that they've gapped Morum behind them, they're a little bit more free to race. I get the feeling that maybe Jacob wanted to kind of play it cool, let them pull away, work together, and once they got some space so that he wouldn't be susceptible to those behind, then he could try an attack or two, maybe some high percentage moves, you know, if he's got the opportunity showing itself. But nothing doing so far. We'll have to wait for something better, and he's certainly still in contention.
Have a look on the, sorry, that did not work, unfortunately. I was hoping that it would come up with the team names. But Gavin Halls, Jacob Tost, Porsche Club GB, Raphael Amorim and Christopher Pies, that is Porsche Club of America. Matty Navala and Henry Pelahico, Porsche Racing Club Finland. That is the top 6 as it stands. Just teammates backing teammates at the moment. And then you have got a little bit more of a battle, as I said, mixing things up. But the Americans were proving very strong here. They are top of the team championships, of course. And at the moment, they're scoring very strongly indeed. Porsche Club GB, probably about equal with the finish at the moment, although Matty Navala and Henry Pelahico very much ahead of the next Porsche Racing Club Finland driver of Jarmo Levo. Jack, Jarmo Levo was one of the drivers that we saw a lot at the top end of the grid at Road Atlanta. It's not quite happened for him this time, has it? But he's still fighting hard to try and bring as many points as he can.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it all depends on the circuit, and while it seems very much like a racing driver's excuse, there are naturally those circuits that you bond with well, and the circuits that you maybe don't bond with quite as well. Now, we're already looking back at this battle. Potentially, the teammates are going to swap around this time in towards Lecombe. Nope, they do remain as is, still nose to tail. Austin Greatorex just sat behind, but Jarmo Levo, it's one of those things. It's got to be potentially the circuit. Maybe he hasn't turned as many laps practice, and yeah, it's one of those situations you don't really know what to make of it when you're behind the wheel. He hasn't gained any positions, but more importantly, he hasn't lost any, so can't be going all bad.
Exactly. I did just miss it, unfortunately, that Amorim has been overtaken by Christopher Pies here, and I don't know whether that was just because Amorim had a poor run through Eau Rouge and Radion, but those two drivers do switch around. There could be, Joe, a team order there. We mentioned team orders for Gavin Halls and Jacob Toss before. If Christopher Pies thinks that he's got pace under his car and Rafael Amorim was holding him up, then they could be using this to try and catch the top two.
I went back and looked, and it looked like Amorim did have a bit of a bad run over Radion. So I think this is something where Pies saw the chance, took it, and wouldn't say team orders, but Rafael kind of knew teammate here, so I'm just not going to fight this because he's got a good run. There's little I can do to really hold him back here.
Exactly that. So we look a little bit further down the order because, of course, we've been focusing right at the top. But credit where it's due to the... well, having said that, I do just want to make sure that I'm not going to miss any exciting moves for the race lead. No, actually, as per usual, they're about 0.2 of a second apart, and they're just... It's like they're attached together by rope, to be honest. They just never leave that gap any longer than it needs to. However, Jack, I think, I don't know about you, it looks like maybe third and fourth are being caught ever so slightly here by the battle for the top five, Matty Navala and Pelahiko. It certainly isn't being extended. So there's every opportunity we could start seeing drivers fighting for podium positions, but we're just going to have a very quick look down the order at some, a little bit of a damaged Danny Jones, unfortunately, here in 21st position. Siddall has gone into the pit lane. I think that's one of the first drivers that's come into the pit. Carl Sharkey, obviously another one, but he was involved in a big crash, so that's no surprise. We're starting to see the first drivers coming in. That's Jordan Dyer. A quick fix there for Matthew Siddall's front bumper, and I'm sure some fuel being splashed in. We do have to keep an eye on the pit lane, don't we, Jack? Because there is opportunities for undercuts, maybe trying to get in some free air, maybe trying to jump a few places. It's a very important phase of the race.
Yeah, it's really the turning point. As soon as you get past the 45-minute mark is when you can almost decide how the race is going to go. Up the inside of James Huth goes Johnny Elia. I think that's Johnny Elia just about managing to work his way through. It is indeed, you can tell by the Union flag on the windscreen banner. So Johnny Elia somehow managing to remain in front as it stands. Another friend, of course, of Simracersworld TV. Been on here a fair bit. In the background, we're seeing more battles ensue. Jarmo Levo just sat behind Chris Braun, who is in turn chasing down Michael Cooper-Smith. So at the moment, it's American leading Finn in this little trio. But as the complexion of the race changes, as the track rubbers in, there's so many different variables for the drivers to think about and potentially drive around as well. If they start picking up issues with maybe the tyre degradation, the fuel coming out, it can't always work in your favour. So we could see a few drivers swapping around once again. And Tom Slater, he's doing something right. I've got to say, 6 places gained from where he started. But for me, Stuart Clark, keep an eye on him. He's 6 seconds behind this little battle we're looking at the moment. And he's gained 4 places from where he started, being followed by Jarne Kerskinen. So we could see further mid-pack battles ensue as the race wears on.
Fingers crossed, because we're in for a bit of a doozy here, Joe, aren't we? We're 20 minutes in, nearly 21 minutes, and the gaps between the drivers are still very close. I mean, we can see there, just in that shot, the 3 drivers we're focusing on at the moment, and then you've got Johnny Elliott and Billy Smith as well, and then you've got the battle for the top 5. It's just, everywhere you look, there's an opportunity for an overtake. It's quite hard to keep up with us. We shoot even further back to Leif Peterson here, trying to hold off No, sorry, he's trying to overtake Janne Kiiskinen. And it's just incredibly close. For the next 40 minutes, these drivers are going to have to keep their heads switched right on, aren't they?
Absolutely, and you might get a good slipstream here. Just a quick update. Looks like Mika in the 69 has come into the pits, so he joined Siddall and those who've taken a stop. We've also had one car in, but not taking a pit stop. No, I take that back. Looks like Dyer is in for something official. He actually had a black flag for his contact earlier on, so that sent him even farther down the order, kind of worsening his day.
So that contact, I assume it would have been with Carl Sharkey earlier on, didn't we? Because we did see them going into that final chicane.
It was indeed. So he didn't get away scot-free on that one, as this battle here with Coopersmith in 11th. Oh, and way wide for Brown. Keeps the car together. Amazingly, Levo does not have a chance to try and attack down into Poulan, because that was incredibly wide from Chris. So he's going to poke his nose on the second half of this double apexer. Still nothing doing into there, but brave stuff. That's not typically a place you pass.
No, and it didn't come off for him in the end, did it? Because, as you said, you do have to be very brave, very committed. But more importantly, you have to have an awful lot of trust in the driver that you're going alongside through there, don't you? Because it could be an opportunity, but Jarmo Levo was going in slightly blind there. Braun probably wasn't entirely sure where his car was going to be. You do have to have an awful lot of trust in the drivers you're racing.
You really do, and he's going to get another shot at it here coming up pretty soon, because he's got the slipstream. If he can withstand the dirty air here through Blanchimont, he could make an attack down into the bus stop. Brown's going to try and defend the inside. Both of them are about even on the binders. Looking for the over-under now. The yellow and gray number 114 just can't get the launch. He's sticking with it, though. Something's going to come up for him eventually, because he's got Chris on the ropes.
There's a huge defensive line coming here for Chris Braun into La Source. That's going to really hurt him if Jarmo Levo can get the undercut, or he might not even need the undercut. He just takes a normal racing line. But I think Chris was just bang on the apex there. Jarmo couldn't quite get the full throttle application that he was looking for, so they stay as they were. But Chris is certainly feeling pressure here. He's going very defensive, and I'm sure that'll continue down in towards Lacombe. I am keeping an eye on the battles at the further forward as well, but we just want to see how this one turns out, Joe, because they've just been going at it so hard, and Jarmo Levo is going to try around the outside.
He's got him just about dead even once again. It'll switch back, and then into Malmedy, unfortunately, is going to be on the outside once again. Maybe trying to carry the momentum a little better with the wider line. Still not there. Looks for it down into Rivage, but Brown doesn't shut the door. He's going to leave him a little bit of space. He could have if he wanted to. Still no pass.
No pass indeed. So as these guys just calm each other down, Jack, there's been some developments, not many overtakes, but plenty of people. It's like a yo-yo effect. They're rubber banding each other, aren't they? As soon as two drivers get a little further ahead, they hold each other up and they invite the others to join in.
Yeah, like you say, the race is only going to ebb and flow from here. We'll see drivers potentially be slightly quicker through sector 1 of the circuit, and then slightly different through sector 2 of the circuit, and so on and so forth until you get right the way back round to the start-finish line. And that all just comes down to potentially how much practice you've done, but also your driving style as well. Of course, we've got drivers from all around the world, so from pretty much every single corner. So it's just down to how compatible you are with the car, so to speak. Of course, you can hop in a car and drive it as quickly as you want, but to really extract every ounce of performance out of yourself and out of the car, it takes that time. It takes that time behind the wheel to get used to the various different dynamics of the car and in various changing conditions as well. And you've got various drivers battling away. As you can see now, this is Jarmo Levo looking all the way around the outside. That's the very long way round of Chris Braun. A look one way, a look the other, looks for the cutback once again, grabs the gear and leaves the corner at a rapid rate of knots, but not quite enough to reel in Chris Braun before turn 1. Has a look to the inside, then had a big look to the outside, couldn't quite get the move done. Then once again looks for the cutback, and there's still nose to tail once again. A big slide on the exit there from Chris Braun. Can he work his way up the inside, Jarmo Levo? Not quite as yet, and the last thing you want to do is go side by side up Eau Rouge and Radion, but he's giving it a go.
He's poking his nose in where it probably doesn't belong, but he gets away with it, doesn't he, as they slot nicely into each other. Chris Braun, he's going very defensive, Joe. He's getting off line every single corner pretty much. but Levo can't seem to get the undercut. He can't get the cleaner exit. He's going for the outside move yet again. He has to be late on the brakes here, and he's gone for the apex. And I tell you what, Joe, that was a bit of squeaky bum time, wasn't it? Because there could have been a huge collision there. There still might be. But no, Jarmo Levo gets that move.
Persistence is key, and Jarmo is going to be able to get himself into 12th, but certainly had to get aggressive on that one. Like you said, I thought, too, he was just going to chop down to the apex, and there was going to be an accident, but Chris, I think, saw what was coming and decided it wasn't worth losing the entire race out of this. So, unfortunately, the 258 back in the 13th. He could still come back at him. That's the question. Was Jarmo being held up here? Is he going to scamper away, or is Chris going to be pretty even on pace?
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on it, but he has got 4 seconds to catch Michael Cooper-Smith. So even though he has got that move done, he's up to 12th position. Is that the best he can do? 33 minutes remaining. We'll have to keep an eye on him and have a watch of it. But again, this battle is just, it seems to, Jack, it just seems to sort of, not stagnated is probably the wrong word, but they're all sussing each other out. They're all relatively happy with the positions. If they started fighting, they would really have no chance of trying to catch Raphael or Christopher ahead of him, would they? So they need to work together here, but none of them are throwing moves up the left, right, hand side, are they?
Yeah, there's no real need to be so optimistic with these moves and take unnecessary risks. But then, of course, the only time you're really going to secure that position is make sure you're decisive with it. And if you're going up the inside, not only the car in front has got a sneaking suspicion you're going to do it, but once you're there, you don't just lose the position once again. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to be you're just going to be fighting a battle you can't win. It's just going to be constant ebbing and flowing, switching positions, and it doesn't get you anywhere. So if you can just sit on the tail end, maybe if you are attuned to the car quite well, and you've got, of course, this long camel straight, maybe just send them a quick message in iRacing saying work together or something like that, just so you're both singing from the same hymn sheet and you can really start to take time out of the cars in front. And I think that's what we were seeing Christopher Pies and Raphael Amorim try to do, but they couldn't quite get it attuned together because they're not really taking time out of Gavin Halls and Jacob Toffs as it stands. James Huth still on the coattails of Johnny Elia, both of them nose to tail. As it stands, Johnny is the better of the two, but all it takes is one little mistake, run slightly wide, miss a gear, anything like that, and the car behind will be through.
A big thank you to everybody who's tuned in to watch this second round of the International Sim Racing Challenge. It's a pleasure to have you along. If you do want to shout out any of your favourite drivers or ask any questions, we'll try and keep an eye on the YouTube chat or Facebook chat or anywhere where you're watching this and try and answer as many as we can, or indeed give the shout out to the drivers that you're here wanting to represent and wanting to shout on. So please do get involved in the YouTube chat. If you want to hit the like or the follow and subscribe, then that would be absolutely amazing too. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Porsche Club representatives from GB, America and Finland on the channel, and hopefully it's something that is deemed successful, and hopefully something that you may well see again on Simracersworld. But before I forget, a big thank you to everybody who has tuned in. Let's go forward. Joe, we've mentioned about how everybody's sort of maybe stagnated just a touch. Austin Greatorex looks like he's a driver who maybe wants to interrupt this Finnish dominance in this little battle.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's been a bit of the reverse for Henry there in the 66. He's been moving backwards, the only one up at the front that's really losing a lot of positions. And he's kind of stuck in this little group of four. Navala in front of him. Like you said, Greatorex is starting to put some pressure on. And they've got Billy Smith starting to close in as well. Other than that, it is well clear behind them by a full 6.5 seconds. I think they have another hitter, James Huth. I see ducked in. There he is.
Yeah, and Janne Kiiskanen and Leif Peterson as well. So we are pretty much bang on halfway through this race now. We're going to have to keep an eye on who's coming into the pits. So far, I don't think any of the top 10 have come into the pits. James Huth is probably the highest placed driver that has been around off on the circuit, basically. We'll keep an eye on where he comes out, and then we'll sort of get a barometer of maybe where the other drivers might find themselves if they come in. But crucially, Jack, there's been no damage at the front end of this order, so they don't have to worry about the fast repairs, they don't have to worry about tyres, they just need to get in there, get the fuel in, and hopefully get themselves out into a bit of clean air. But a lot of these drivers won't have pit crews, will they? They won't have someone there sort of scoping out when they should pit to try and get clean air or anything like that. They'll just be guessing and hoping for the best.
Yeah, it's just another thing to add to the list that you do behind the wheel of these race cars. Unlike in real life, where you've got everybody doing everything else for you, your main job is to keep the car on the road, keep it competitive, and keep it driving. And when you've got obviously a pit crew and a full team behind you, if there's anything desperately you need, you can of course press your radio button and give them a shout, figure out what you need, and then of course you can alter your strategy around that, alter your driving style around that. But when you're behind the wheel, you're focusing on not losing a place, trying to gain a place, keep it within the track limits, making sure you manage your fuel, manage your tyres, and then at the point where you can no longer manage them any longer, go into the pit lane, get the right amount of fuel, don't overfuel, don't underfuel, return to the circuit. It's such a busy job. And with the drivers that have got full rigs where they might have 3 screens, VR, direct driver wheels, whatever you've got, it's very physical, very mentally draining as well. And after an hour worth of racing, it doesn't surprise me if a few of these have to go for a couple of hours kip. And just as we tick past the halfway point in the race, the drivers know if they've got halfway on a certain amount of fuel, they can get to the end on a certain amount of fuel. So 32 minutes of the race has been completed. We've got Christopher Pies, Raphael Amorim, as well as a few of the other drivers as well. Chris Braun just working his way into the pit lane as well. Stuart Clark not doing so, but we've got a lot of drivers peeling their way towards pit road.
Yeah, so Amorim, Pilahiko, Christopher Pies even, Greater X, Elia, Cooper Smith, Braun, loads of drivers, and you can see actually the pit lane starting to fill up quite quickly as Tom Slater goes past. That means he's gained 17 positions. Technically, the most amount of positions that anybody has gained in this race. However, he hasn't pitted, so that may well go down by the wayside, but I thought I'd give him a shout out anyway. Well done, Tom Slater. Drivers coming out of the pits now. It is as they were. Raphael Amorim, Pies, Pilahiko, Greater X, I think may have jumped one position. I'm not sure. No, he comes down the straight. Actually, he's still behind Pilahiko. We'll have to obviously wait to see where the likes of Billy Smith and Navala come in, and Jarmo Levo obviously as well, and how they all mix up, because Joe, it's crucial to get your pit time the minimal amount of time as possible, because realistically we've seen drivers who have come in for 53 seconds, some who've come in for 55, some who's come in for 57, and there's such a difference in pit lane time. It can make all the difference on the track as well.
Well, and unfortunately, fuel is not, well, it is an exact science, but it's not. Because, yes, you may have used, a certain amount for the first part, but maybe your pace is a little bit different. Maybe the track is a little bit different. So you might not use the same amount. So it's not as a matter of, as we got a pass here from Lee Peterson down into Lacombe. Looks like that is Mika there in the 69 that had to give that one up for 17th place. But yeah, so you don't just plug a number in and say, I use this much the first 30 laps, I'm going to use this much for the next 30 laps. So things change, and you have to play and adapt, and you have to change your driving style too, because if you short fuel, well, then you got to start saving. And that is something that every driver hates, because every driver just wants to go fast, and saving fuel doesn't mean you can go fast.
Jacob Toss and Gavin Halls have switched positions, but only because they're coming into the pit lane. So, by the looks of it, they're coming into the pits. Matty Navala, Billy Smith, and Jarmo Lever have also come into the pits as well. And let's see where they come out in amongst that battle for the top 5 that we've been following so adamantly throughout this entire race. I think, potentially, I thought Tom Slater was going to go into the race lead there, but this means Raphael Amorim is the driver that's going to come across the start-finish line. Let's see where the other drivers. Jacob Toss is coming out already, and that means he's jumped Gavin Halls in the pit lane. Jacob Toss, with that fuel saving, Joe, has got into the race lead.
Actually, Toffs took him on the track a few laps ago. We had completely missed this. And Halls, unfortunately, has been trailing him since then. So Jacob Toffs has basically turned the afterburners on. He's left Gavin in the dust.
Jack, that is big news that I didn't realise, but I have now found in the event timer, and it looks like Toffs just went for the inside. He got the run. Maybe a mistake from Gavin going through Eau Rouge and Radion, but they have swapped positions. Joe was absolutely right, and this could be massive for the race.
Yeah, massive for the championship as well, because of course now Jacob Toft is no longer pushing Gavin Halls around. Can Gavin keep up with Jacob's pace? On first glance, no, because he's losing time to our new race leader now. So it's all down to how Gavin can respond to that. It seemed like Jacob got the better of the runs over Radion. Of course, he had the draft assistance right the way up to Lecombe, and then when the time came, he just poked his nose up the inside. And of course, being teammates, being co-Porsche fanatics as well, the last thing you want to do is dent your mate's Porsche. So he just gave him ample room, let him go up the inside, and decided it wasn't worth racing him. And Gavin Halls, he's in a closing battle, I think, at the moment. Jacob Toft's pulling away, Rafael Amorim gaining. So it's going to be tricky for Gavin Halls to remain as he is, but we'll have to keep an eye on him. Still with plenty of time to go in this race, just under 25 minutes remaining now. So there's plenty of time for the race to change. Of course, plenty of time for Gavin Halls as well to pick up the pace if he so chooses to work his way back forward on the way up to Jacob Tofts. Billy Smith still trailing Christopher Pies, pardon me. Rafael Amorim just up the road as well. So at the moment, the Americans really coming out in force. You've got 3 from 3rd to 5th, and then you've got 3 more from 10th to 12th. So they're really starting to work their way forward and hopefully getting some good points for the championship as well.
Joe, I would probably argue one of the biggest gainers of the pit strategies, or the pit sort of times that we've been seeing, is Billy Smith. He was in 8th position at the back of a fight for 5th. He's jumped all of them. He's into 5th position, but more crucially, he's caught up to Christopher Pies and Rafael Amorim. This is massive for podium positions, because all of a sudden, although they're 3 Americans, Billy Smith has played that to perfection.
He has. I'm not too surprised. I've been covering him in the Audubon Sports Car Challenge for a number of years, so he knows how to work these pit stops and get the most out of them. And he's actually raced with Pies in that series too, so these two quite familiar with one another. Question is, are they going to work together here for these final 20 minutes to try and get as high up as they can go, or is he going to just go right on the attack? They've got Amorim in their sights already. In fact, I think Pies has a decent run.
Yeah, Pies does have a decent run. A little bit too far back for now, but enough to worry Amorim and maybe think, oh God, I really need to nail a Radion and Eau Rouge every single lap for the next 22 minutes to make sure that I'm keeping these two behind me, because that Kemmel Straight, the draft is just so powerful. We've seen it in pretty much the entire race, that there's that opportunity in pretty much every single lap, as long as you're within about 0.3 of a second of the car going into Eau Rouge. Now, I noticed a couple of laps ago, Jack, that Jacob Tofts, I think he was slightly playing with Gavin Halls. Look at the gap that he's managed to open up. And if we're talking about the sort of opening half an hour as almost the first, well, it is the first half of the race, but the first sort of part of the race before the pit lane, I saw going into Lecombe and at the end of the Kemmel Straight that the gap was closing up constantly. He was within about 0.5 of a second behind Gavin Halls, but then it would extend before the braking zone. So I think Jacob Tofts was actually biding his time, knowing full well he'd save an awful lot of fuel if he just stayed behind Gavin Halls. And that is a tactical masterclass from a driver who doesn't have any pit lane people to help him.
Yeah, he really did play that to his strengths there. But of course, if I'm following somebody that close, I tend to lift off a couple of meters before the braking zone anyway. So as soon as their brake lights light up, I can stamp on the brakes as well, knowing full well I've already got rid of those surplus mile an hour because I've been in his draft, so I can stop before I end up eventually collecting the tail end of the car in front. But Jacob Tofts lifting off nice and early, potentially clutch in as well, just to save as much fuel as possible, because it's not just, of course, you can go longer into the race, your pit stop time will be much less. So having made that position, and with the pit stop time being very slightly less as well, it allowed him to take to the circuit, already have a little bit of time in hand as well. So he's already got the pace and he can just go forward. Chris Braun has found himself in the wall on the run up towards the Lecombe chicane. So let's see what's happened here. The two cars in front, is there any contact? He's getting squeezed, and they bounce off each other. Chris Braun flies towards the barrier. Jarmo Levo, I think, got away with that one just by cutting the chicane a little bit there. So the 114 machine on the left-hand side of your screen, yeah, for me, squeezing Chris Braun a fair bit, and then it's just, yeah, they bounced off each other, both into the wall, and I think Jarmo Levo got away with it quite lightly.
Yeah, he definitely would have got away with that, wouldn't he? But it's not what you want to see, is it? As we're seeing James Huth and Johnny Elliott again. Even though we've gone through the pits, Joe, this battle hasn't gone away, has it? And James Huth with a mad move around the outside. I wasn't even getting excited because I thought there's no way that could happen. That's a hell of a move by Huth.
Oh, he's just very good on turn-in. I'm not sure if maybe Elliott slowed down that little bit more or what, but Huth clearly much stronger in that section of the track. So Looks like the driver who frequently has his mom wave at him from the broadcast and ask if he saw her has got one more chance for her to cheer.
Cheer it on, definitely. That's what we like to see in the broadcast and in the chat and everything like that. I'm just having a look at I don't think anybody, potentially Andy Marston, I don't think anybody's made the same mistake as we saw last week when people had to take tyres. Jordan Dyer, I don't know, is it a recovery drive, Jack? He's having to come back through the order, hasn't he? He's clearly got half-decent pace because we saw him fighting for about the top 10 fight. He's in 17th at the moment. He's got Stuart Clark ahead of him. It's a hard race for him so far, isn't he? He was in the pits. I think he's been in the pits twice. No, he's only been in the pits once, but he had to repair some damage. And again, he's just not really shown what he can do here this evening, I don't think.
No, he pitted earlier than anybody else. He went into the pit lane on lap 9 of the race. So fairly off strategy for a lot of the drivers. Everybody else pitting around lap 14, 15, something in that general ballpark, just to make sure they can make it towards the end of the race. And yeah, I think a comeback drive is probably the best way to put it, because we've seen him a lot higher up through the order. He's lost 5 places from where he started, looking to pick off Stuart Clark now. He looks to the outside. You can see the car squirming around on the brakes. He somehow managed to get it slowed down. He didn't manage to pick off Stuart Clark, but they are still nose to tail. Back up to this battle though, it's Rafael Amorim under pressure from Christopher Pies. Christopher Pies pulls out to the right hand side. He does get in front and then pulls back in front just to gift his teammate a little bit more draft assist, potentially a little bit of team play here. Christopher Pies, Rafael Amorim, Billy Smith all working together. They've got to be careful though, because the flying fin is on their tail.
Yeah, so far the top 2, Porsche Club of Great Britain. The next 3 out of the top 5, all Porsche Club of America. Then you've got Henry Pelahico in 6th position, Austin Greatorex in 7th, Matty Navala in 8th, James Huth in 9th, and Johnny Elliott in 10th place, although they are pretty much constantly trying their best to change that top 10 position, aren't they? Austin Greatorex and Andy Marston, technically, are the only 2 drivers that haven't yet changed from their qualifying position as it stands right now. So Austin Greatorex effectively qualified 7th. He is 7th. Then he's the only driver on the grid to do such a thing. Andy Marston technically is as well, but he's been lapped, so technically he's a lap down. It's not quite the same. That's quite. I always like pointing that fact out. I think it just sounds pretty cool. Splitting back to Austin Greatorex as well. He's got Henry Palahico in his sights, less than 0.3 of a second between them. And as they're coming up towards Blanchimont, we haven't seen too many moves, Joe, into the final chicane, but there's always that threat, isn't there? There's always that opportunity if the driver doesn't quite get the run right.
I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more tries into that corner, because they're through Blanchimont, where they just ran. You have a lot less of the dirty air to worry about than, say, high super downforce cars, and Greatorex brakes a little early. So yeah, Henry doesn't have to fret this time into the corner. I wonder if Austin is waiting for a better chance or something, because I would have thought he was close enough that he really could have chucked one in.
Yeah, well, that's what I was curious on, really, because we've seen a few drivers that are just taking their time through there more than anything. Jordan Dyer, he might actually throw one up the inside of Stuart Clark. He's been following him for a fair old while now, but he's just been gapped. Blanchimont there, he didn't quite get the turning that he wanted, had to go off the throttle. He does brake nice and late, but he only can get up the gearbox of the driver in front. He can't actually make the move. Jarmo Vihikainen, has had an off, and there he goes. He's spinning off the circuit, unfortunately, and he was in 23rd place. 24th. He's pretty much stayed in 24th, unfortunately, as he wasn't too close to any of the drivers. Henry Henry, apologies, I've just completely minced my words, and Greatorex closer than ever. Jack, this is going to go down to the wire. We've got 15 minutes left. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly.
Yeah, it happened at Road Atlanta. Just every minute of the race ticks by so quickly, because there's constantly drivers just nose to tail, and you can't really pick between them. And it's not like they are the usual candidates. There are new names, returning names from Simracersworld. I know that for sure. But then there's also drivers which may or may not have more experience at the circuit and in the car as well. So you can't really predict how this race is going to go until you're looking at the results screen in 15 minutes time. And as it stands, I still couldn't really put a finger on who's going to finish on that final spot of the podium, because the 3 Americans nose to tail all still vying for that position. The top 10 is very much unsettled. Let's just go from pretty much Jacob Tofts, if he did on the road, so too does Gavin Halls. So from the top 2 backwards, there's no real telling how they're going to finish.
Yeah, Jacob Tofts has actually gained, he's gapped, by 3.2 seconds pretty much, so just over 3 seconds of Tofts' advantage. However, Greater X looks like he's got a run this time. Joe, you didn't see him going for the move before, you could see him going for it here, but again, I think the problem is, I think the run through Francorchamps is just upsetting the cars in behind in that dirty air. You just can't set that move up, can you?
Yeah, he definitely fell back a bit that time through the corner. And some of it might just be the blindness. If you're that close to the car ahead, you got to pick. Everything has to be so perfect in these GT3 cars going through Francorchamps. So I wonder if it's just he went a little wide or had to lift a little bit, and that cost him. As we switch over to a few more here in the back, Dyer going to try it once again. Is he actually going to get this one done? He's going to get to the inside. Clark not going to fight him that much, lets him have the apex. And now he's under threat because this is Mika in the 69, who unfortunately has to go way wide, so that threat fades away. But great stuff from the number 1 to get back into this, considering, remember, he had that penalty, that black flag, so he's had an extra stop effectively in this race.
Pilahiko's under attack now from Greater X, going down the Camel straight, but he just about manages to hold on. But for how much longer? Greater X is all over the gearbox and the rear wing of Pilahiko, and he has to go defensive. Greater X looking for that cutback, but it's a long apex right-hander. They go down the hill towards No Name, and Pilahiko holding on to that position for now. The pressure is building, Jack, isn't it? It's been there for 47 minutes now. All of a sudden, the drivers behind are starting to look a bit more ambitious. We just saw Dyer go through on Clark on a bit of a lunge. We might see Greater X go for a similar kind of thing, maybe into Lacombe. That seems to be where he's gaining the most amount of advantage. Really exciting the last 12 minutes here. But the only driver who's, I'd say, probably in a slightly dull race is Jacob Tofts. He's just absolutely flown away since the pit stop. Still about just over 3 seconds the gap. Gavin Halls has got 8.7 seconds back to Christopher Pies and the Fighting Americans. That's going to be, we're going to have to keep an eye on this battle for the top 5 and the battle for top 3.
Yeah, it's still really, really unsettled as it stands. Austin Greater X, like you say, the only driver that hasn't moved places in the field, barring Stuart Clark. So Austin Greater X looks to the outside, hard on the anchors, then has another look to the inside, almost contact between the pair of them, desperately down through the gearbox, almost contact yet again on the next apex. He had to grab the brake just to make sure there was no contact to the car in front. He's running out of time, however, only 11 minutes of this race remaining, and there's still nose to tail. Austin Greater X, if he's going to get this move done, he needs to figure out where he's going to do it and then how he's going to switch his attentions from attack to defend, because, like I say, he's running out of time. If he's going to get the move done, he's got to get it done within the next sort of 5 minutes. You don't want to get it done on the last lap of the race, because then you could potentially outbrake yourself slightly too much, getting overconfident. It's the last lap of the race, I need to get it done, and then you go and ruin your race altogether. So Austin Greater X needs to get it done in the next 5 minutes, recompose himself, and then focus on the defence.
However, this top 3 battle, I thought there was going to be a move there. You know, Joe, I thought Rafael Amorim was looking a little bit tasty and ambitious going into Lacombe there, but like Jack said, not too long to go in this one. But I just want to highlight what a great defensive car positioning that Henry Pilahiko went in around that second apex of that chicane, that final corner. He just stopped the car, didn't he? Slammed the brakes on, and then Greater X had to then come off the throttle. There was no chance of getting around him. Perfect car positioning from a defensive driver there.
It really was, and often that's what makes a great driver, more than just the raw speed, but keeping your cool in those situations. Lesser driver would have seen him in his mirror and went offline, giving him the space, like you said, but he just shut the door and made sure he sat back there. You were talking about Amorim there for a second. He's got his hands full, because let's not forget, he's got 2 champions with him. Summer Series champion for Christopher Pies, and then the first PCA Series champion for Billy Smith. So he's up against it. He's got some serious competition if he wants to try and be able to take this podium.
Backs against the wall then for Amorim, but he's shown very good pace, hasn't he, realistically, over the course of Road Atlanta and Spa. And they are 2 quite different circuits. I mean, Road Atlanta is tricky in its own way, but overtaking, I would say, is slightly easier at Road Atlanta because you have the very obvious sort of locations at the end of the back straight and into the chicane. Whereas Spa, you sort of have to set it up a little bit earlier. I suppose the Kemmel Straight is probably the closest thing that you can get to it. But they're two different circuits, Jack, but these drivers have mastered them both very well.
Yeah, I think there are definitely differences between the circuits, but there are definitely similarities as well, because of course you've got heavy braking zones into the chicanes, you've got lots of elevation change as well, you've got a fairly tight and twisty section of the circuit. There's some curbs you can and can't use, there's some sections of the circuit that have got plenty of runoff, some sections that don't, so there are definitely trade-offs between one and the other, but as it stands the drivers really are starting to settle in already. I think you could almost hear it there. Christopher Pye's using all of the circuit, even the tiniest little bit of curb on the inside of Kemmel Corner before you get onto the Kemmel Straight. Lifting off in towards Le Combe is Rafael Amorim, saving a little bit of fuel. 9 minutes of the race remaining, make that 8 minutes of the race remaining now. Rafael Amorim, if he wants to get this podium, then it's there for the taking. But like Joe said, it's going to be no mean feat because he's got champions all around him as it stands, and you can see typical Porsche understeer around the Brussels hairpin and then back on the power once again through No Name, back down the hill towards Pouhon. It's one of those circuits you never get a break.
I was going to say, Joe, it is exhausting, isn't it? I mean, I know you've commentated on the Americans quite a lot, and you know that they race quite often, but when you're in a battle for a full hour and you are never more than half a second away from each other, it's mentally draining, isn't it? I mean, we'd almost be expecting mistakes to happen within the last 8 minutes, but these drivers are so on it, they're so tuned in that they've just been driving expertly, and I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, people think that this isn't, something that you need to train for because it's not as physical as real racing, but you absolutely do. Like you said, it's a mental game. And you physically do need to, in a sense, as well, because these drivers, it puts you through the same mental anguish and the mental intensity. So basically, your body is tensed up this whole time because unless you've learned how to control that. So if you haven't had that training to know how to handle yourself through the entire race, then you could wind up exhausted at the end and not just be making mistakes because your brain isn't in it, but because you've worn your body out just clenched this whole time.
It's a common thing that I underestimate, I should probably say, for sim racing, because I often think, I've done a little bit of real life racing, I often think, it'll be fine, I'll jump on the sim and do a few races. I'm coming off sweating out of the sim more than I am in a real life race car. It's absolutely, I mean, that's mental exhaustion more than physical exhaustion, to be honest, because realistically, if you're in a real life race car, you're sort of so involved with it that you have to be dialed in. You have, because otherwise, if you make a mistake, you're off it into a wall and it hurts quite a lot. Whereas in a sim, because you've got that nice barrier of, I don't have to worry about it physically hurting, you're not sort of on the edge quite so much. So you actually have to make sure you're concentrating, which in my opinion can be very exhausting. For the last 6 minutes, roughly, we're starting to see the rest of the field plateau slightly, aren't we, Jack? Because realistically, the fight for the top 10 has sort of died away a little bit. We're seeing nice big gaps to everyone outside the top 10. You got the fight for sort of 5th and 3rd that we've been keeping an eye on. But other than that, the session is the race is sort of after that pit stop, just ebbed away from a few drivers. And that is part of that fatigue that we were talking about, isn't it? That the fact that when you are racing as close as these guys are, only the best can do that for a prolonged period of time. After that, drivers just make small mistakes and you see the gaps open up.
Yeah, I think potentially, while it is a race of attrition as well, it's definitely a race that was eventually decided on strategy, because we saw lots of battles up and down the order, and then we saw those battles fade away and new ones generate as soon as we leave that pit window and drivers retake to the circuit with slightly more fuel than they left it with. So once again, it's then that changing condition. Of course, your tyres are not going to get any younger, they're not going to get any grippier, they're only going to fall away more and more. You add fuel to that, you add even more load. Austin Greatorex, a big look up the inside, almost went defensive there. Did Hico, and just as I look over at my timing screen and then look back, he's pointing sideways. Talk us through how that happened, Jacko.
Yeah, so Peter Hico, in what is probably the most typical Porsche spin in any of the Porsche cars that you could possibly race in, the rear end rotated on Peter Hico as he went over the brakes. The brake application is something that doesn't get spoken about enough in racing, in my opinion. But he just had too heavy a brake. He just put the lock on a little bit too much, and there we go. The replay has finally popped up on my screen. We're focusing on Greater X, but as he came over that elevation, Joe, he just had too much brake on, didn't he? The rear was already rotating, and that exemplified things.
It's very hard to pull things back when a Porsche starts spinning. As soon as it goes, you kind of have to just accept the inevitable. And yeah, you can see, like, as soon as it came around, he basically slammed on the brakes and just hoped that he wasn't hit. Thankfully, no contact between cars from what I could tell.
Billy Smith is very close to the back of Amorim, although to be fair, now we cut to it, the doesn't look any closer than it hadn't been before, if that makes sense, sort of thing. So we will be keeping an eye on this. They're closing up slightly. The battles are ensuing. These drivers, the lap time is a 2 minute 15 seconds. We've only got 3 minutes to go. I think, Jack, we can probably safely assume this is the penultimate, if not 3 laps to go. And it's just, this is the start of where people will just be like, I need to get into this lead. The draft is all very well and good, but track position is ultimately the best place to be, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes back to that old saying, catching another driver is one thing, but overtaking is really quite another. And at Spa, yes, there's plenty of overtaking opportunities. This late on in the race, the last thing you want to do is take an unnecessary risk on the final lap, like I said, in regards to Jacob Toft's potentially working his way past Gavin Halls, but he did that just before, or just after the pit window, I should say. So it's one of those things. It seems like that's the most famous saying of the night, really, because it is. There's nothing much that the drivers can do in regards to changing their fate in these Porsches, because they're so difficult to drive. I say that very late on the brakes. Up the inside goes Raphael Amorim, or goes Billy Smith, sorry, up the inside of Raphael Amorim and Billy Smith, and position changed. And like I say, you don't want to do it on the last lap, so you do it on what I think may potentially be the penultimate lap. It's just got to keep an eye on Jacob Toft's. Yeah, so 2 laps to go. So this is the penultimate lap now. Jacob Toft's still leading the way, almost 5 seconds ahead of Gavin Halls, who's 10 seconds ahead of this battle we're looking at the moment. Still led by Christopher Pies. Of course, he's now got a little bit more time in the bank because Billy Smith compromised his line on the way in, compromised his line on the way out. So too did Raphael Amorim with that change of position. So Christopher Pies sitting pretty up at the front.
Well, here's where it gets tricky, Jack. Is reason I cut in there is because I was watching, and it's very close. Jacob had about 4 seconds before it would have been 1 to go. So hopefully these drivers have calculated, go back to that fuel I was talking about, have calculated that extra lap in, that they were going to go to 27 laps, I guess, at this point, and not 26. Because if you are dealing with those fine margins and trying to save enough and shorten your stop enough that you can jump somebody, you could find yourself a lap short on fuel, and you can't exactly make a lap very quickly in fuel here at Spa with how long the lap is.
Well, that's interesting as well, though, because if the likes of Gavin Halls has maybe a lap less fuel than he needs in the end, because obviously he miscalculated, do you think that he'll be like, okay, I'll come off the throttle through Blanchimont, Jacob, just slow down so you can just go over the timer at the right time? It would be a rather dodgy sort of, not quite on the nose decision by the teammates, but I would understand it, because obviously it's better to have a 1-2 than a 1 and a DNF, isn't it? So you never know if Gavin Halls or another driver in the Porsche Club GB remit has maybe messed that up slightly. Jacob Toft could come off the throttle, and if there was 4 seconds to go, he has every opportunity to just coast to the end and make sure he ticks over when the timer does. But we're going to have to focus on him at the moment, because I think you're absolutely right. He hasn't slowed about at all, and with 3 seconds on the clock to go, he crosses the line to start the white flag. Or have we had the checkered? I think it's a white flag lap.
Yeah.
Yep, this is 1 to go now. And he wasn't slowing, so he seems confident about what he's got underneath him. Meanwhile, these guys will have 1 more lap to try and sort this out. Smith has actually got up to the back of Pies. Can he do something with him?
A huge 0.2 of a second gain on that previous lap. And all of a sudden, they're going to know it's guaranteed now that they're on the last lap, you might as well go for it. There is a team championship to think about, but there's also personal pride. And just like you said before, Joe, they may race together quite a lot, but these drivers will be looking to try and just get one up on their teammates. As Billy Smith goes to the outside of the Kemmel Straight, they're coming down towards Lacombe. Christopher Pies, I think, is a bit of a sitting duck, but no, his car seems to have found a little bit of acceleration. A bit of side draft as Smith tries to go around the outside. We've seen it from plenty of drivers. We've seen it from Smith, but Pies looks back on the inside. He takes the apex. Smith runs wide, but he has the position. Third place is Switcheroos.
Great respect between the pair of them. Clearly, you could tell they've had a lot of experience with one another. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
No problem. So yeah, Billy Smith currently sat there taking up the final step of the podium. Christopher Pies, like you say, Joe, they've raced with each other so much, and that's what I said. It brings in that mutual trust. You know how each other are going to react, and they gave each other ample room once again. It was great to see on the final lap of the race. Of course, we've still got Rafael Amorim waiting in the wings, potentially looking to pick up a position. Fingers crossed that nothing happens, but if it all does go wrong, Rafael Amorim will be the big winner out of that one. A little bit of a blink there from Christopher Pies. Let's hope that that doesn't bring an end towards his race, but Billy Smith still sat there in third place, doing what he can to defend off any attentions from behind. In a few moments' time, we will have Jacob Tofts coming to the line through Blanchemont for the final time. It's Jacob Tofts.
Yeah, so he's led not quite start to finish. He qualified on second place, but he drove his first stint to perfection. He came out with about 2 seconds less in the pit than Gavin Halls, and since then he's pulled a gap of 5 seconds. He's taken a double victory here in the International Sim Racing Challenge. Jacob Tofts is your champion individually. Gavin Halls comes across the line to take second place on the day. We'll have to keep an eye out and seeing how that plays out as an individual championship. Billy Smith, which was probably the biggest winner out of everyone in the pit lane window, he comes across the line. He takes 5 positions gained from his starting place on the grid to take the bottom step of the podium. Christopher Pies and Rafael Amorim can finally breathe and have a drink after what was a race-long battle. Austin Greatorex kept ahead of Matti Navala, and crucially, obviously, that Pillar Hiko spin before obviously gave Greatorex that second place. James Huth and Johnny Elliott finished the top 10, and Joe, it was a hell of a race, wasn't it? We still got some drivers to settle here. Matthew Siddall versus Tom Slater.
Yeah, Siddall. Oh, and they're going to go side by side through Blanchemont unless someone gives way. This is going to be a game of chicken that Siddall is going to win, and Slater has to give way.
Yeah, so Siddall going through into 16th position, though Slater not having any of it, looking up the inside, and just behind them they've got Jordan Dyer, who of course had to come in with a black flag incident early on, which is why he's all the way down in 18th position. He won't be overly amused about having to pit twice in this race, but unfortunately, if you go into the back of another driver, it's just part of what happens. The last couple of drivers coming across the line, then we can bring you the full confirmed race results for how they are on the track. It is slightly provisional. There are stewards' inquiries and everything like that, but we're hoping that everybody keeps it friendly and keeps the stewards rather free rather than overly busy. Just before, in case I do forget before we sign out, a big thank you to everybody who's tuned in, and Porsche Club, both from Finland, America and GB, for putting on the International Sim Racing Challenge and allowing Simracersworld to be a part of it. A big congratulations to the drivers for putting on such a fantastic show as well. Well, we're about to bring up the race results. Jack, it's been a hell of a race. It's been a hell of a 2 races, hasn't it? Both Road Atlanta and here at Spa. It would be very nice if Porsche Club decided, you know what, this could be a regular thing. We could have this back more often. Yeah,
let's hope so. It's a brilliant championship, and it's brought a lot of drivers from around the world together. And of course, Porsche has got such a massive following globally, so they could bring in a complete package with it and potentially do a GT3 one week, a GT4 the next week, something like that. There's always the potential there, so hopefully they do decide to continue on. But you can see Jacob Tofts, your eventual winner here at Spa this evening, almost 5 seconds clear of Gavin Halls in second place. Billy Smith rounds out your podium after a last lap battle with Christopher Pies in 4th place. Rafael Amorim rounds out your top 5. Then it's Austin Greatorex and Matti Navala. Then Henry Pilarco in 8th place, followed by James Huth and Johnny Elliott. Then it's Michael Cooper-Smith, Jarmo Levo, Leif Peterson, Janne Kiskinen, followed by Stuart Clark. Then it's Matthew Siddall and Tom Slater and Jordan Dyer in 18th place. We saw that trio battling away towards the final chicane on the final lap of the race. Then it's Jyrki Aalto with Chris Braun, Ben Simpson, Danny Jones, Jarmo Vilkainen, followed by Mika Pelarko. Then it's Andy Marston and Carl Sharkey not taking the checkered flag.
Yeah, a bit of a shame for Carl Sharkey, especially obviously getting spun around by Jordan Dyer so early on. Ended up only finishing 5 laps of the race, which was a real shame. We do have some race interviews, and Joe, I believe you're quite happy to maybe take the interview for our race victor, Jacob Toft.
Indeed, we've got Jacob here in with us. Jacob, congratulations on the victory, but we noticed an interesting pattern on this race. You were hanging out with Gavin for the first half. You made a sudden pass shortly before the pit stops, and then you were gone. Were you holding anything back in those first sectors?
Not really. I was just trying to get used to the track. I hadn't had much time to practice, so I just wanted to use the first half an hour or so to reacclimatize, some would say, myself to the track. And then towards when we got closer to the pit stop, pass him.
So you could have fooled me, because as soon as you got by him, it seemed like you had control of things. After that pit stop, was there any concern on the fuel? We noticed you crossed with roughly like 4 or 5 seconds before the checkered flag would have came out. I assume you calculated in that extra lap?
I didn't realize it was that close. I think I definitely had some spare fuel at the line, but I'm not sure how much, maybe a couple of liters probably.
Well, this is one to be proud of, because you were certainly in some good company here, up against some steep competition. How much do you value a win here in amongst the various Porsche clubs, literally from around the world? So you're bringing competition in globally.
Yeah, I think it's really cool just to have. Normally, when we do this, we just do it with the British people, or they do it with the Finnish or the Americans. So it's cool to get everyone racing together, just under one roof of a server, I guess, and see how everyone does.
Well, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out for that helped make this one happen?
Yeah, Porsche Sport, Sharky Bikes, My Dash Simulation, and Johnny Moore Watches, and you guys and all the organisers.
Thank you very much. That was Jacob Tofts, our winner here today. Jacko, do you have
Thank
anybody waiting with you?
Yeah, I think we can bring it. Well, what I'm going to do very quickly is actually bring in our 3rd place man, Billy Smith. I'm going to leave Gavin Halls just to the end, because he was one of the people sort of crucial in organising the entire thing, the entire International Sim Racing Challenge. So I'm just going to bring in Billy Smith here. Now, Billy, I wanted to have a chat with you as well, because out of everyone in the pit sort of strategy, you seem to have really gained a lot of positions from that. Was that in the plan as you were in that fight for the top 5, that you knew you could fuel save, you could get in there, and you could potentially get that 3rd place in the end?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I did not expect it to go as well as it did. But the position I was in, the guys ahead of me were fighting extremely hard, and I thought that, it's so difficult to pass. It was going to be kind of a low probability kind of thing to try to fight them. And so I'm like, well, if I can save fuel, I can at least hop them in the pits potentially. So I didn't expect to come out 3rd.
I was going to say, what was it like fighting with Christopher Pies and Rafael Amorim at the end there? Because I know you are technically teammates, but have you raced with? I think Joe was saying that you raced with Christopher quite a lot, but Rafael Amorim, have you sort of been around him a lot? Was there sort of a good understanding between the 3 of you?
Yeah, we raced against each other quite a bit. Obviously, I've raced with Chris quite a bit more, but I just kind of came out, and I had taken so little fuel, I actually had to stay behind them for a little bit. But I think Rafael had a little bit worse tire situation, and I had actually been saving tires the entire time. And so my strategy there was just stay behind them until about 2 laps to go, and then see what I could get.
I was going to say, you did. It was a fantastic sort of couple of laps to get you up into that 3rd place. We just heard from Jacob Toss there about sort of how fun it's been to get everyone together and sort of get them racing. Is it something that you'd like to see again? Would you be involved in it again, to be racing with sort of different nationalities and different groups of people in the Porsche and sort of getting it broadcast and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a ton of fun, and thanks for everyone for putting it together, especially the PCA. I mean, it's doing a lot of the PCA stuff with the local guys here in the U.S. is fun, but then just getting some new faces in there. I'm not sure what all those other clubs are doing as far as their sim racing and everything, but it certainly is a lot of fun. I mean, everyone here in the PCA is a good group of guys and gals, and it's just fun to get together with them.
Yeah, well, I do know that Porsche Club GB, they do put their series on and they broadcast it with us at Simracersworld. So fingers crossed, if there is any sort of correlation, or we can line something up, maybe we can get involved in that as well. It's been absolute pleasure having you guys and the Finns, of course, along for the ride. Billy Smith, congratulations on the 3rd place. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Just all of my Texas club members here in the PCA, and say hi to my girlfriend Lily here, and just thank you to the PCA and everyone for putting this together. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and we echo the sentiments. It has been an awful lot of fun. And thank you very much, Billy, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
And that was Billy Smith, Joe, our 3rd place finisher. And just before we go, I hope you don't mind if I have a chat to Gavin Halls, who of course came 2nd on the track, leading for a long time with that, Gavin, but the pit lane couldn't quite keep in that lead.
No, Jacob's a tough one, eh? He's the real deal. So congratulations to him. He just had the pace on me. So he sat behind me first stint, and I'm like, he's fuel saving. So I was hoping he was burning his tyres up, so I was trying to save my tyres. And I thought, if he's going to save fuel, I'm going to save tyres. But apparently not. He had more rubber on me at the end as well. He's just obscene. Like, yeah, you can't take anything away. Jacob is absolutely awesome. I've raced with Jacob's dad. I actually own one of Jacob's dad's old race cars.
Oh wow!
So I'm racing, as a proper kid. I'm Jacob's dad's age. So that's my excuse for being a little slow. But in the pit stop, he pulled like a 2.5 seconds on me in the pits, and that was it. It was game over. As soon as you're out the toe, that's it.
To be fair, Gavin, I'd say that, you being the same age as Jacob's dad, I think you're pedaling pretty well to keep up with him then. It's quite impressive to see.
I'm trying my hardest. It's catching up with me.
Going slightly away from the race, because obviously we've been over that sort of thing. The organisation of the entire event, because obviously we know, well, you've been our point of contact to Simracersworld, haven't we, about putting the events on and everything like that. It must be quite a lot to take on for you, but when you see the results and you can watch the broadcast back and everybody's been so happy on the Discord and everything like that, it must make you feel pretty good to be a part of it and make you want to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to thank PCGB they actually hosted this event. So the first series we did was run by PCA, and PCGB stepped up this year and hosted it and have paid for it. But I've got to say, like, in terms of organisation, it's not me. I'm the voice here today, but there are 2 others. So we've got I never pronounce his name. Joy. He's got another name because nobody can pronounce his name. So I think it's Jerky from Finland, and then we've got Doug, obviously from PCA, who are the fellow organisers. But to be fair, all the hard work was done. So I know if any of you watch the PCGB races, you'll have heard the term Bernie. Bernie's the organiser of PCGB. He did all the prior work to set this series up with Doug and Jigri. I've had to come in at the last minute because unfortunately Bernie's been tied up with some family issues that he has to attend to. So I'm a last minute stand-in. So all I can say is big thanks to Bernie, a lot of time and effort. And I'm seeing it even more myself firsthand the last couple of weeks with the amount of time I've had to put in as well. So big thanks to Bernie and the other guys for putting it on. And we miss you, Bernie. I hope we get you back soon.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully coming back for maybe the Porsche Club GB season 4, if that ever comes to fruition, you never know. But absolutely, we want them back as soon as possible as well. Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations on the P2. Obviously, not quite where you wanted to be, but it's still a good result.
No problem. I was hoping to get the results in, but they've just taken a little bit longer to work out. But we'll post them up, and I'll pop them up in the comments on the YouTube stream.
Absolutely, yeah, that would be really good. So if anybody is wondering about the results and maybe the individual championships or even the team championships, then please do make sure you're following the Porsche Club GB, America, and obviously the Finns as well. I'm sure it'll be shared amongst all of those guys as well. So, Gavin Halls, thank you very much for jumping in. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to who maybe you haven't mentioned so far before we let you go?
I'll give a big shout out to you three guys there in the commentary booth. I'm sure you've done a fantastic job for us as always. And then obviously my sponsors, who's Shark E-Bikes Esports and Midas Simulation. A big shout out to them. And Matt, my buddy, my teammate. I missed him tonight. He wasn't out with me, so not been the same without Matt. Either in front of me or just behind me, about a tenth away, which is normal.
Well, I was going to say, it's a shame that Matt wasn't here today because Carl Sharkey, who jumped in for him, didn't really have the race that he was hoping for, did he? After being turned around in lap 5. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, Gavin. Hopefully we'll be speaking to you soon about upcoming series, but hopefully we'll be speaking to you on the broadcasts as well in upcoming series.
Oh yeah, it's happening. We'll make some announcements next week for season 4. It is coming.
Oh, exciting stuff. Right, Gavin, thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy.
And that was Gavin Halls, Joe. And just before we sign out for the evening, any last thoughts from you? Obviously, you weren't here at Road Atlanta. It's a bit of a baptism of fire here at Spa, but it was exciting, wasn't it?
It was extremely exciting. I mean, we got a battle for the lead. We had drivers fighting for that last step in the podium all the way down to the last corner, so you couldn't ask for more. Very happy with what we were able to witness today, and hoping to get to call more of these in the future.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. I know that the Porsche were keen to have you on it, so hopefully you'll be commentating more with me and Jack here on Simracersworld. Fingers crossed. A big thank you. I've said it 2 or 3 times now, but it can't be understated. A big thank you to everybody who has tuned in, who's been enjoying the Porsche Club International Sim Racing Challenge with us, either whether it was last week or this week. Big well done to the drivers as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what you saw or what you raced in, and you can maybe follow or subscribe to Simracersworld TV as well. We got to put a plug in there. I hope you understand. It's been an absolute pleasure. My name's been Jack Oliphant. We've been joined by Jack Werrell, who had to jump off, unfortunately, a little bit early, and Joe Peak as well have been your commentators for this evening. We'll see you next time, whenever that may be.